Hi there, I'm Bryan Steven. I'm the exhibitions director of the Peterson Automotive Museum, and I'm here on the rooftop of the museum on an absolutely beautiful Southern California day with an extremely exciting automobile. What we have here is the Volkswagen ID.4. It's Volkswagen's first all-electric automobile and really the second electric automobile that Volkswagen has been producing as part of its new modular MEB platform. It's actually very pertinent that we have this car here because we have a great relationship with Volkswagen and we have for a number of years, and actually have an exhibition downstairs we have for over a year on the MEB platform that underpins this car. The ID.3 model that is the predecessor of this car and which has been available in Europe for some time now and has met with great success. And so it's only natural that we would be one of the first places in the United States to unveil the United States model, the ID.4, to the world. So really excited to see this. It's an absolutely beautiful car. I've been seeing pictures of it for a long time now as we've worked on the exhibition. And I've seen the ID.3, I've seen the platform. We have a raw chassis downstairs, but I've never actually seen this car yet in person. And I gotta say, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's very, very modern, very, very sleek. It looks electric, it looks forward-thinking, but it's still a very, very approachable car. And really excited to get to know it here. And eventually, I think we're going to have one or more of these or components of these in our exhibition downstairs. That's our hope once all of the components are available here in the United States. So I'm told that this is not just an ID.4, but this is what's called a first edition ID.4, which is essentially a very limited initial run of these cars, which has a number of unique characteristics. Obviously, or the most obvious thing would be the badging here on the side of the car, which very distinctly indicates that it's a first edition car. This particular first edition car also has a very unique two-tone interior, which I'm told is exclusive to this model and is certainly very, very attractive. You can see the interior here has an extremely minimalist functional design that we're starting to see become a trend on electric vehicles in particular and others as well, other vehicles as well. Beyond that, in terms of characteristics unique to this model, there are certain bits of trim on here that are unique. I believe the contrasting tone on the mirrors is unique to this first edition model. And another really interesting characteristic here, the accelerator pedal and the brake pedal have a play symbol and a pause symbol, which I've been told is something that will be unique to this first edition subset of the ID.4. Is a little bit of a fun little treat there. A couple other features that are unique to the first edition of the Volkswagen ID.4 are a special welcome screen on the central screen there in the middle of the cockpit. When the car turns on, the driver is greeted by a screen that basically calls out the fact that it's a first edition car. Beyond that, these cars are going to be available in two trim packages essentially, and the first edition cars actually include all of the characteristics of both of those trim packages as standard. So quite a few unique things about these cars that'll make them especially attractive to people who are, would like to purchase one of these, to be an early adopter, so to speak, and purchase one of these early on. So I'm a fan of sports cars. I don't typically drive SUVs, but from everything I've learned about this car, its driving dynamics, its characteristics, this is a car that someone like me is really going to enjoy driving. It's got 201 horsepower, it's rear-wheel drive, it has a special traction control system that, despite the fact that it is only two-wheel drive on this model, it's constantly sensing traction at all four wheels independently and adjusting so that the car essentially behaves as if it were an all-wheel drive vehicle. So taking it around at speed on a track, from what I've heard from those who've done it, is actually a pretty exhilarating experience and something that I am looking forward to doing myself. In terms of charging, the vehicle takes advantage of the Electrify America network. There are 3 years of free charging available to purchasers of the car, and I'm told that the car can go from 5% charge to 80% charge in just under 40 minutes. So taking this car on a long trip across the country and taking advantage of the Electrify America network really will make it a pretty enjoyable experience and very practical as well. So there's no question this is a car of the 21st century. It's extremely minimalist, entirely electronic based. When I sat in the car, I did literally nothing and it recognized I was here, turns itself on, activated all the electronic systems. It's extremely comfortable. The austere design actually makes it very pleasant to be inside the car. It's not overwhelming by any means, despite all of the electronic controls. Really simple interface here. Those can sometimes be a lot to take in when you first get in a car like this, but this one's very simple in appearance, and I'm sure equally simple in operation. I'm noticing this hexagonal motif, which I believe is going to become common on a lot of the ID series cars, makes its presence known everywhere in the patterns on the seats and all of the little panels here in the central control panel here, and it gives sort of a really nice unifying aesthetic to everything in the car. There is a really interesting little device here that is known as the rocker switch, which is really the switch used to activate drive, neutral, reverse. On most cars, that's something that you would lift up or down or twist like a typical knob. In this case, it's a very uniquely shaped switch that you do twist, but it has a very different sort of means of acting here. The parking brake is a small button on the side of that, and it integrates really nicely with the aesthetic and doesn't have the sort of traditional look that a lot of those kinds of switches do. Really interesting. Now, also in this modern day and age of Alexas and Siris, you'd expect that we might be able to simply ask your car to do things, and I'm told that this car has that capability through what's called the Hello ID system. Apparently I'm able to simply inform the car that I'm too hot or too cold, or that I want the radio to be louder or more quiet, and it'll be able to respond to all of those requests and commands and adjust things accordingly, which I'm really eager to try that out on the road. All right, so we've been experimenting here with the interior lighting, the ambient lighting, and learning how to make changes to the color, which I've learned you can select from nearly infinite colors, it seems, by custom selecting from some slider bars here. To go back through the process, all I needed to do was ask the car to change the interior colors by doing this. Hello ID. Change the color of the interior lighting.
Select an ambient lighting setting on the screen.
So my digital assistant comes up with a number of presets. I can pick from some of these evocatively named presets: vitality, euphoria, desire, eternity, or infinity. Let's try one of these. Let's try eternity. So we'll see that the screen itself has a new color aesthetic or blend of colors. The actual colors that you can see throughout the cockpit actually have changed on the doors and things like that. But I can also go into these slider bars here that I mentioned earlier and can pick from these two color bars and sort of custom mix from a pretty wide array of colors to create a color pattern. I'm going to do this pretty randomly here and see what happens. As I do it, you can kind of see these strips of illumination on the dash here are changing color. The background of the screen itself is changing color. Let's do something dramatically different just to see what happens. You can notice the changes down there too. So it really adds an interesting ability to change the mood and ambiance of the inside of the car in a pretty fun way. So another thing that we've noticed when changing the interior colors here in relation to these two bars is that when you're selecting two colors, you're actually picking colors that will appear in different places in the interior. So right now we actually, by using the two bars separately, have picked a color for the dashboard, which is very distinct from the color we're seeing on the doors back here. So it's even more creative possibilities we're finding than were initially apparent. So a lot of opportunity to create some pretty interesting moods here in the interior of the car, and all of this simply by asking the car to do it. So yeah, the rear seats, although I'm relatively tall at 6 feet, the rear seats are extremely comfortable, plenty of leg room. I would have no problem going on a long trip sitting back here, which is not something that can be said for a lot of cars today. A Southern California car museum can't do any kind of exhibit on the subject of Volkswagen without looking a little bit at the history, however, despite this being our industry floor, because Volkswagen and Southern California are completely intertwined. The culture, the automotive culture in Southern California and Volkswagen are inextricably linked. I think there are, globally, I think people would associate the transporter in general, in particular, that is, with the culture of Southern California, with surf culture, with counterculture during the Vietnam War. The transporter, along with the Volkswagen Beetle, were very, very commonplace in Southern California during the latter half of the 20th century, and really, I think, became associated in many people's minds with surfing, with the general California lifestyle, in part because of the adaptability of both models, in particular the Transporter, the flexibility, the reliability, the space they offered, the fact that the bodies on the Transporter, again, could be used as a canvas for artwork. For many, many different reasons, the Beetle and the Transporter found huge success in Southern California and really became part of our history. So this exhibition dives a little bit into the past, highlights the importance of Volkswagens such as the Transporter and the Beetle in Southern California history. And then we jump into a little bit of a sidebar that actually is a particularly important one. What we're looking at here is actually a Volkswagen Beetle that has been transformed into something substantial and significant. This is 1964 Myers-Manx, known as Old Red. This is the very first Myers-Manx dune buggy, built as a prototype in 1964 by Bruce Myers, a Southern California resident, who wanted a dune buggy or an off-road vehicle for himself, but looked around and couldn't really find something that was up to his standards or that met his needs. So he looked to the very flexible and adaptable Volkswagen Beetle platform as the foundation for with which to build, or on which to build, a very capable off-road vehicle. He designed a fiberglass body, all his own, made some other changes to the vehicle, put it all together, and this became his prototype called Old Red. He put it to the test in Baja just a year or two after a couple of individuals set a new record racing down the peninsula in motorcycles. He took this vehicle and raced down Baja and beat that record by over 5 hours, which was pretty amazing and really proved the capability of his design of the Volkswagen chassis as a foundation for his design. That event, the setting of the record, certainly was noticed by others in the off-roading world, and they went on to establish a formidable competition known as the Mexican 1000, eventually the Baja 1000, in which vehicles such as this and what became a pretty wide variety of cars raced down Baja to try and get the best times. Bruce Myers, using a latter example of his Manx dune buggy, went on to win one of the first of those races down the Baja Peninsula, even further proving how capable this car was. So not only did this specific vehicle, or was this specific vehicle very important, but it also served as the foundation for the production of all of the Myers-Manxes after that, and those served as the inspiration for what today are tens of thousands of dune buggies in California and around the world. Some of them actual Myers-Manxes, some of them derivative of them, some of them copies of them, but really all of that and really all of dune buggy, the world of dune buggies and dune buggy culture can all be traced back to this very specific Volkswagen Beetle-based prototype called Old Red back in 1964, which was built here in Southern California. So again, very important Volkswagen history here in Southern California. So having set all of this up, we move on to look at the real core of the exhibit, which is about the future of Volkswagen, Volkswagen's plans for the future, the cars it's going to build, and how it's going to build them. As I mentioned, Volkswagen's looking to an electric future, and here are 3 examples of cars that it has built or looks to build using its electric platform. The little quarter-scale model here in the foreground is its ID Vision, which is an all-electric sedan using the MEB, the flexible MEB platform. Another vehicle using the same platform up here is this concept called the ID Buggy, which should probably look pretty familiar, as it's a modern homage to the Myers-Manx that we just saw over there. And behind it we have the ID.4, which is an all-electric hypercar in a way, although it's not meant for road use, that was built a few years ago in a very small quantity and that went on to set numerous world records at some of the most challenging tracks around the world, including the Nürburgring. And the records set by the ID.4 were not just minor. He didn't just break records by small amounts. It actually broke some records by very substantial amounts. And I encourage you to look online for videos of the ID.4 on the Nürburgring and some of the other tracks that it's raced on. It's absolutely incredible to watch a car powered by electricity conquer tracks like that. If you didn't have, if you weren't convinced of the capabilities of electric propulsion prior to watching what this car has done on the Nürburgring and other tracks, you will be convinced after watching that. Moving on here, we go from the plan to the actual physical manufacture of vehicles. What we have here is an ID.4, Volkswagen ID.4 body shell being lowered onto an MEB electric platform with a battery pack, the flat battery pack in the middle here, and electric motors on either end. The MEB platform is a very flexible platform. In this configuration is set up to accept the body shell of the ID.4, which is a compact electric vehicle that preceded the ID.4, which will be available here in America. However, that same platform can be adjusted with relatively minor modifications to accept an incredibly wide variety of personal vehicles, of commercial vehicles, of even competition vehicles. So Volkswagen expects to use that as the basis of many, many cars moving forward.